Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kellen Klein, and I'm the Executive Director of Citizens for Community. If you don't know about us, we're a local nonprofit that works to cultivate a more connected community here in Sisters and surrounding areas by encouraging civility, collaboration, and civic engagement. I'm excited to be moderating this event and partnering on this event with age-friendly Sisters Country. So before we dive in, I'd love to pass it over to Mike Deal, the President of the Board of AFSC, to just say a few words.
Thanks, Kellen. I'm just going to make a welcome and three quick thank yous and turn it back to Kellen. I'm on the board with AFSC, Age Friendly Sisters Country, so we're delighted to be partnering with C4C today. I want to thank our panelists today because they're really the experts. They're the ones who had an idea and really made something happen. They took it and they developed it. And there are a number of folks that have been supportive of their efforts. So we're looking forward to being inspired by the examples of STARS, ride share and transportation for people needing to get into Bend or Redmond for non-emergency medical. We're also going to be hearing from SCLI, the Sisters Community Leadership Initiative for trash pickup in the forest, and also from Living Well with Dementia. So three really great examples of what you can do with an idea. And I'd also like to thank all of you for coming out on a long weekend on a Sunday afternoon and spending your time. If you don't have an idea, we hope that you will be inspired to have an idea. And if not today, next week, or next year, hopefully the examples and information that's shared today will be useful to you. And finally, I'd just like to thank Kellen for agreeing to MC today, because we really have a packed agenda, and I need to shut up so that we can get started. And Kellen can take it from here. But thank you so much, Kellen. It's really been a good cooperation.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Mike. It's fun to partner with AFSC. And I know we have some other representatives from C4C and AFSC in the house tonight. Would you mind raising your hand? C4C, got some AFSCers, another C4C'er, another AFSCer. So if you have any questions after the event, please come find one of us. We'd be happy to talk more about you. Mike kind of alluded to this, but one of the things that C4C and AFSC tend to get a lot is questions about, hey, I've got this burning idea for how to help my community. How do I put it into action? And that was really the inspiration for this whole event. And so we hope that we can bring all of us together to share some inspiring examples, but this is also our first time doing this event. So it's an experiment. We hope to make it interactive, get your questions so we can continue to hone this. We're also recording this so that people can watch it after the fact. So hi to literally one person online right now. That's fine. We know that there's going to be millions of views on YouTube in the near future. So, but we want this to be a living resource for the community. So that's why we're recording it. Just, remember, anything you say will go up online soon. So just to get things started, we are going to take you through the levels of engagement for community building today. We're going to walk you through from the easiest way that you can get involved, maybe start to turn your idea into reality, all the way up to processes that are maybe a bit more complex, but we have people here in the room who are experts in that space. So gear up for that. It's going to be exciting. If you get a lot of value out of this, we would love to hear about it and get your feedback after the fact. There's some opportunities to sign up for our newsletters, and also to get some takeaway resources that we'll email out. If you registered for this event, you will automatically get all of those takeaway resources after the fact, which will be a bunch of links and recommendations that you'll hear mentioned up here today. So Mike mentioned this as well, but just to get started, give yourselves a pat on the back because you are here today. That is step one of getting engaged in your community, of having an idea and wanting to really put it into action. Yeah, we're actual applause. Hooray. Thanks, Dixie. But no, we really appreciate you. I mean, one thing that C4C really believes is that there's a role for everyone in community building, but that it takes everyone to get engaged in the community in order to making it a thriving and resilient place. So you are part of that. Thank you so much for being here, and we're very grateful. The there's also a ton of value in getting involved, both for the broader community, obviously, but for yourself. It's proven to be one of the most fulfilling things for me since I moved to Sisters Country. I started volunteering with C4C, then joined the board, and then got asked to serve in this role in an interim position, and now in a permanent executive director role. And so, volunteering, getting engaged in various ways can, lead to careers, but it can also lead to just a lot of personal fulfillment and passions. So I encourage you to explore all those ways, and this is one of them. I just want to highlight also that, we're scratching the surface of ways that you can get engaged in your community. There are a ton of ways to get involved with your time, your treasure, your talent, your expertise. And there's some great folks in the room, again, who can point you to other avenues for, putting your passion into practice. One who I'll highlight later is Pat at the back of the room with SAGE, which stands for Senior Advocates for Generational Equity. I'm going to give her an opportunity to speak. But there's other people that will hold your hand through the entire process. So stay tuned for that. All right. So you have an idea. Great. What do you do with it? Let's start with level one. You're just going to hear from me for a couple of minutes, and then we've got a bunch of other folks that I'm going to bring up. So you don't have to hear me for the whole time today. Don't worry. All right. We got a slide deck here. Level one, donate. So maybe you have a brilliant idea, but you don't have a lot of time on your hands, or you're just looking for a way to put it into practice as quickly as possible. Yeah, we'll do the solicitation of donations at the end. Thank you, though, Erica. Yeah, but to your point, there are many organizations locally that are in need of financial support. There's also many organizations locally that might already be doing something aligned with what you're interested in. You have a brilliant idea that relates to the environment. Okay, let's find you existing organizations. Do your homework, figure out what organizations are working on environmental issues, and maybe there's a way that you can support the efforts that they're already doing instead of reinventing the wheel by going out and starting your own project or your own initiative or nonprofit. My slides did not advance. Please hold. So we're going to talk about ways that you can donate, and then we're going to talk about how you can figure out what types of organizations to support. So there's many ways to give. Some of these are probably duh. But let's just walk through them for a second. You can give a one-time donation. You learn about an inspiring organization. Great, give it some money. And there's a couple places back here where people can drop some money in the tip jar for this event today. You can also set up recurring donations. You probably get pestered with these around this time of year or in your mail every single day of your life. So that's really fun. But yes, setting up recurring donations is a way to continue supporting causes that you care about. In-kind donations. Anyone know about in-kind donations here? Probably a few. That's basically giving things that aren't money to an organization. So, sometimes organizations need a table or a laptop or some food. Donating in-kind donations, it doesn't have to be, dollars and cents that you are contributing to an organization in order to support the causes that you care about or you align with. Donor advised funds. Oh man, we could have an entire session on these, and maybe we will one day, but this is a fancier way for benefiting now from the tax benefits of tax deductible contributions to nonprofit organizations, but being able to sort of hold that money in a pot and allocate it later down the line to organizations that you care about. This is quite a complex concept, but if any of you are in a position where you might be really keen to get some tax benefits now, there are some organizations and individuals in this community who would be happy to walk you through this process. Many financial advisors can. There's also an organization here in Oregon called the Oregon Community Foundation that specializes in setting up these donor advised funds so that people can contribute to the causes that they care about. Giving circles is another really interesting concept that has gotten more popular over the past couple of years. This is essentially a bunch of people coming together, talking about causes that they care about, and then collectively agreeing to pool their resources towards one or more organizations so that they can be more efficient with their contributions by giving larger sums at any given time. And there happens to be one right here in Sisters called 100 Women Who Care Sisters. And I think now they might be like 102 Women Who Care Sisters. But they meet quarterly. Everyone who joins agrees to write a $100 check quarterly to the organization that they collectively get a majority vote on electing to support. So that means that, 100 women with $100 donations apiece, that's like 10 grand per quarter to an organization here in this community. If you're interested in getting involved with that organization, there will be some links in the takeaway resource. Anyone here in the 100 Women Who Care Sisters group? Oh man, like half of you already. Fantastic. So if you're interested in the giving circle concept, you can talk to them both about that one specifically or about the concept in general. Legacy gifts. This is something that you can set up to so that when you pass, there are opportunities to continue stewarding your legacy by contributing to causes that you aligned with. This can be, again, money, it can be in-kind donations, etc. So yeah, there are many ways to give. This is a great opportunity to get involved. But wait, how do you know what organizations to contribute to? Well, there's a variety of resources that are available right here in Sisters Country that I recommend. One is in your nugget this past week, or as I call it, the single source of truth for Sisters Country. But this week's edition, there is something called Partners in Giving, which showcases a bunch of local organizations. The nugget is now going to start doing this twice a year, I believe. So pick up your nugget and you'll be able to learn about a lot of organizations serving our community. Another way is something that C4C has developed. We call it our Find Your People database. It's on our website under the resources section. Fun fact, there are over 50 nonprofits registered in our zip code and dozens of others that are based regionally that are serving Sisters Country. We've created this database so that you can go and learn about all of them. You can filter by the type of organization, by their area of focus. You can see which ones have events and volunteer opportunities coming up. This is another great way to learn about local organizations that you might be able to support. And then there's a campaign going on right now called Central Oregon Gives. This is put out by the Source Weekly. They are showcasing over 100 nonprofits, and if you donate to them between now and the end of the year, you'll also get some perks in return. So if you're looking for organizations in the region that are doing great work, go check out centraloregongives.com. And finally, if you're interested in broader issue spaces or nonprofits working beyond Sisters or beyond the Sisters Country region, Charity Navigator is a great website. You can search by charity or cause on their website to learn about various organizations. And they also have a sort of scoring or ranking or rating mechanism so you can figure out which organizations are legitimate in terms of their performance, their financial accountability, measures like that. How are we doing? Oh, we're so far behind. I'm going to speed up. All right. You made it through level 1. Congratulations. You can go donate and leave. All right. If that's all you wanted, then see you later. Level 2, just like there's many ways to donate, there's many ways to volunteer. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. It's possible to support an organization that already exists in our community or beyond. There are one-time volunteer opportunities. You can get involved with a particular project and support that organization in a long-term capacity. I'm sure Rennie with Stars will be talking about that later, or maybe Dana as well. You can serve in more of an expertise role. It's not necessarily that you're just going to be, handing out food or, picking up trash or something. A lot of folks are really looking for your expertise in a particular area as well. So that might be as a mentor, as a strategic advisor, or possibly even serving on the board of an organization. Raise your hand if you're with an organization that's looking for board members. Yeah, there's a lot of those around. Yeah, and they will hunt you down, let me tell you what. So be careful if you say you're looking to serve on a board. That is more of an ongoing commitment. That can be, there's a lot of different types of boards out there. There are volunteer boards. There are boards that are more focused on financial oversight and accountability for an organization. Again, a lot of folks in the room here who I'm sure are willing to share with you about their experience serving on a board here in Sisters Country. But where do you go to learn about these volunteer opportunities? Well, again, I mentioned our C4C database. You'll see that there's a column right here that has a checkbox for volunteer opportunities. This indicates organizations that have regular volunteer opportunities. And if you click into them, you'll be able to find contact information to get in touch with them. We're also, thanks to some support from the City of Sisters community grants, working to develop an actual volunteer dashboard for Sisters Country where local organizations can post both current and ongoing volunteer opportunities. So stay tuned for that. We'll put a press release in the nugget. Next, I'm going to invite Pat up here for just a moment from Sage Central Oregon, who's also wearing, I think, 2 hats tonight. And so, Pat, I'll let you talk about them both. But Pat is an incredible human who loves helping people find their purpose and their passion projects. So, Pat, I'm just going to let you introduce Sage and talk about what you do here in Central Oregon.
I know. Really intimidating. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. I'm with SAGE, and SAGE stands for Senior Advocates for Generational Equity. And it's a 13-year-old Oregon-based nonprofit, and we've been in Central Oregon now for 5 years, and I'm the lead for Central Oregon. So we recruit and look for people 50 plus who are considered seniors according to AARP. I used to throw my magazine away when I was 50 years old, and I got it, and I go, no, that's not me. But it's me. So what we do is we try to connect people who have a gift, who have a passion, who have a certain amount of time to a volunteer opportunity. We will work with sisters, we work with all around Central Oregon. So no matter where you live, whatever's convenient for you, we just really believe strongly in giving back so that our future generations can thrive. It's all about those who follow us. We have a Greek proverb that we go by, and I'll paraphrase it because otherwise I'll butcher it. Basically, you plant a tree knowing that you will never enjoy the shade, but future generations will. So that's kind of our motto. And we do it through education, the environment, and equity. So we have tutoring programs, mentoring programs. We're just finishing up a civics engagement program that we're doing with the Deschutes Library. We work with Kellen, which has been awesome. And so any of you who are interested or know somebody who's just moving into town who might want to get involved, I can help them. So thank you very much.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pat. One of my favorite things is hearing Pat's stories about people that she's met with for coffee and just set them on a path towards volunteerism with some local organizations. So if you're looking to get involved and you want a little guidance, she will help you find your path. Another great resource if you're looking for volunteer opportunities is called Connect Central Oregon. They have a volunteer dashboard that lists volunteer opportunities across the region. They also have a bunch of other services for people looking to do this type of work that I'll mention later, but I would encourage you to check out their website, connectcentraloregon.org.com. It'll be in the resource packet, don't worry, but I highly recommend that as a more region-wide resource. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, it's not only with nonprofits that you can volunteer. Actually, there's a lot of other opportunities to volunteer and serve within the community. One that is in our back pocket right here is with the City of Sisters. They have a variety of different advisory boards, commissions, and committees where they're constantly looking for community representatives. This is a way to help engage and advise on the way that your city is progressing over time. They just closed their fall application window, but I'm sure that Mayor Preedin over here would be happy to tell you more about when those opportunities will next arise. Anyone else here serve on a community advisory board, committee, anything like that? All right, look around the room. You can see those hands if you're interested in those ways to get involved. Again, a lot of people that are probably willing to tell you about it. Okay, you made it through the first two levels. Rapid fire. We're right on time. I know it. Actually, I think we're pretty good. Level 3, this is where things start to get a little bit more complex. Maybe you've done your research. You've realized, there's not an organization that feels like it perfectly fits what I'm trying to do or this thing that I care about. So there's not really an organization that I feel like I want to perfectly support with my time, my treasure, my talent right now that already exists. So what comes next? A lot of people would probably jump right to, well, I guess I got to go out there and start my own nonprofit, but I'm sure that can feel very intimidating. So there's this interesting middle ground that maybe some folks haven't heard about called fiscal sponsorship. And there are some organizations right here in Sisters that have deep-rooted experience on both sides of this, being the fiscal sponsors and getting fiscally sponsored. Sorry, I messed it up there. So right now I'd like to invite Peggy Tehan with Age Friendly Sisters Country, Bill Kelly with Rotary Club of Sisters, Rennie Morell with STARS, Dana McNeith with Sisters Community Leadership Initiative, and Mayor Preedin up to this ginormous panel. And we're going to have a little conversation to explain to you what is fiscal sponsorship and how do you go about it. We're going to be sharing mics here a little bit, folks. This is also the part where we're going to have some opportunities for questions after each panel discussion. So if you think about your questions, there are some note cards over here at the front if you want, or actually maybe on your seat if you want to write a question down so you don't forget it, or if you just feel more comfortable passing in your note card to ask a question, please feel free to do so. You can just raise your hand and I'll come grab it. But yeah, stay tuned and we'll have questions in a little bit. All right, my esteemed panelists. Let's talk about fiscal sponsorship. I am going to start right in the middle with Peggy, and I'm going to just drop a bomb right from the start. So Peggy, what's fiscal sponsorship? Tell us.
So a fiscal sponsor is a nonprofit organization that is kind of like the administrative umbrella for different projects. And the projects would be based on a nonprofit or a public benefit type of group. The nonprofit that I'm involved with, who is a fiscal sponsor, is Age Friendly Sisters Country. And that organization was formed under the Age-Friendly model, which is a World Health Organization model, which their work is to enhance livability issues globally. Here in Oregon, Portland was the first age-friendly community designated by the WHO and AARP, and the City of Sisters, thank you very much, Mayor Preedin, is also a recognized age-friendly organization. So with the Age-Friendly Sisters, our mission encompasses the domains of livability, and then we administer bookkeeping services. We have a board, we have liability insurance. So kind of the scope of what a nonprofit project needs to operate. We already have those things in place to facilitate the person that has the idea or this project to get right on the ground and moving forward with that project. It's a great model, not only to facilitate a really quick working of that project into being able to connect with donors and receive donations through their fiscal sponsor that are qualified donations, meaning that they're a 501c3 organizations, which is sometimes very limiting for donors. And then we would also be following through with just being the backgrounder, kind of the overseeing organization to support that project.
You know, I actually have had a fiscally sponsored project by Age Friendly Sisters Country as well. And when I got started, initially it was just, oh, well, this is an easy way to get, tax deductible status so people can give us donations. But it's clear from what you're talking about that fiscal sponsorship can be so much more than that. You can provide sort of the soup to nuts overhead and administrative capabilities. You can provide, strategic counsel to those people. So it's really much more than just, rubber stamping their donations.
Yes, and I think one of the other real benefits is to be able to get it up and running and just to see the viability of that project and the sustainability of the project. That we've had a few action teams that are very short time frame with just a very small mission or pretty precise mission. And then we've had other ones that started out with knowing what they wanted to provide. And then once they get started, really see what the need is, and the people that are in need of the services and the people that are willing to donate their time and energy to that. Yeah.
What are your limitations? I assume you don't take all comers. I have a friend who
No.
wants to start a fly fishing club. I
Mhm.
assume you need a social services purpose.
So the
Right.
question was, are there requirements for
Mhm.
what gets accepted as a fiscal sponsor? Jim, you're jumping the gun on me here, but I'll allow it just this once.
Well, in Age Friendly Sisters, in our mission is based on the domains of livability. And so projects that fall in those domains, which would be like housing, medical services, food security, environmental environments, equity and inclusion. So it would have to, so if your friend came to Age Friendly Sisters, we would probably have to point them into another direction for that specific thing.
Now, Bill Kelly over here, who wears many hats in this community. Bill, you also have some experience with being on both sides of fiscal sponsorship. Is that correct?
Yeah, so little background, Rotary of Sisters is an international organization. We have over, I think it's 4 million members, something like 1,200 clubs around the world. Our group collectively raises for our Sisters Rotary Foundation about $350 million a year. And that's just by individual donations that the club does. That doesn't count when you get down to the microcosm of Sisters itself, what we're donating back to the community. We raise, our club's budget is $50,000, which we raise every year that we go to fund various projects around. So we've got a list in our group when we put together our budget of groups we support. So we give, when Neighbor Impact was looking for money to build their new resource building for the warehouse, we donated money to that. We do a bunch of that stuff through our sisters group. And then we have a separate organization built into it as well, which is Sisters Rotary Foundation, which is a 501c3 organization. We formed that about 8 years ago, and we did it with an endowment that we received from one of our members, and we put it into the Sisters Community Foundation that's rolling out the investments and what we do with the interest that comes off of that. We sponsor scholarships at the high school. We give 3 scholarships out on an annual basis. That's what funds it. So we're doing some fiscal responsibility in that. Where we can drill down to a specific event is actually one that I worked with C4C on. And there was a need last March when the airport decided not to do the Rumble on the Runway, which is the big 4th of July fest that Sisters had for a long time. So we partnered with C4C. We were the financial people responsible for this. So we ran the budget, put all the monies up for it. And that's how we hosted the Sisters 4th Fest on 4th of July last year. So we partnered with them, and it was our fiscal responsibility just to make sure that we break even on it, and we did. So we're looking forward to moving that again forward. So we're in a capacity we're a little bit different. We did actually, with one of our groups, we had an idea, and I'm not going to steal all of Debbie's thunder, but I'm always looking for recruiting for new members for Rotary. And that's just great things. You can bring people into it. And Debbie was my neighbor, and I asked her to join Rotary, and she's also works with the Alzheimer's Association. So she spoke at our Rotary Club meeting, which was quite fascinating. We immediately connected with another member who has got family members that have Alzheimer's. And we immediately said, we need to do something. Okay. So we had our idea of what we wanted to do. So we started off with just basically a talk that we held here, the fire hall in June of 23. And what we did is we said, let's invite the community. Let's see who's going to show up. So we had 60 people showed up and wanted to learn more about Alzheimer's and dementia, which was really fascinating. We're like, wow, this could be large. And then as to what Peggy said about validating your idea, is we went out and did a survey. We surveyed, it was a real rough, I call it a dark survey. We did it on social media. We got 150 people responded saying that they needed specific services that dementia and Alzheimer's in the area. So we said, okay, 3 minutes. Okay. So that's what we did to really get it going and so Debbie will fill in the next spot. And we did have we did talk to Age Friendly Sisters Country, and they were extremely helpful us in our path. So I would encourage everybody to talk more on that.
So it sounds like Rotary is almost like a maybe not as formal as or it has served in a capacity where you've helped incubate community ideas, but maybe not as formal of a fiscal sponsor per se as Age Friendly Sisters Country. Is that a fair description?
We're more of a rough and tumble organization that does that, but we use brute force to get it done.
All right, that's going on the recording for sure. That's a soundbite. But I think that's good to illustrate that, you know, there's sort of a spectrum of support mechanisms with existing nonprofits for how people can get involved. Let's shift back again to Peggy, and maybe if others want to chime in with this one too. Rennie and Dan, I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak, and Mayor Preedin as well. But we've got two examples here of, you know, potential fiscal sponsors in Sisters Country, but say that those don't fit the bill for someone for one reason or another. How does one go about finding a fiscal sponsor? Like, is there a Google or a fiscal sponsor database that people can search for? Or where did those come from?
That's a good question on the database. I think that we're pretty lucky here in Sisters with kind of the networking that takes place in our community. I know Dana had come to us, Bill had come to us with their ideas. And after kind of mutual discussions, it was kind of agreed upon that AFSC probably wasn't the best suited organization for this fiscal sponsorship, but also we're aware of other nonprofits that might be a better fit for them. And I think C4C has also been very applicable in that, the Rotary. So there is lots of networking. I think just the databases that are available through C4C. And, you know, we got Google. You could probably go in and Google a fiscal sponsor that handles X on that. And I believe there are my own search for just talking at this seminar that there are some fiscal sponsors that are like national fiscal sponsors that are seems generic as far as taking on projects.
So the bottom line is that, oh, Rennie, were you going to say something there? Please go ahead.
I could. Hi, everybody. I'm Rennie Morrell. I'm with STARS, and we were fiscally sponsored, but when we were transitioning away from C4 from AFSC, one of the things that we looked at was did we want to look for a different fiscal sponsor? So we went through quite a process, and we used Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council did a project for us. And one of the things that they found locally and in Oregon is there's not a ton. There are fiscal sponsors, but like AFSC, you need to fit with their mission and what they're doing. And so I have a list of a few that they found in Central Oregon, but there's just not that many out there. And so AFSC was a good fit for us.
I'm glad you brought up COIC. We'll be bringing them up later. And yeah, that's a great resource to highlight here for folks looking to do nonprofit work in Central Oregon. Sounds like the bottom line is that, you know, fiscal sponsors exist all over the place, but finding one that's, you know, the perfect alignment for your issue area, your region, et cetera, can be a little bit tricky. Thankfully, we're very lucky here in Sisters Country, clearly with a few that offer that type of support. So if you want to learn more about that, you know who to talk to now. I'm going to turn it back to you, Rennie, actually, to tell us a little bit more about your fiscal sponsorship journey. Start us at the beginning. When we know we're going to give you some other opportunities to speak to the nonprofit side of things, but why did you opt for fiscal sponsorship, and where did this all start? And then we'll go to Dana.
I could talk about stars forever, so I won't. And I wrote it down so that I wouldn't. So, but in 2018, C4C hosted a project, and it was for the Senior Alliance. And what the initiative did was look at Sisters and look at what services were missing in Sisters. The three that came to the top, the cream that everybody in the room, and we had a lot of people in the room for the town hall on that. They were looking at three things that we needed in this town that we don't have. One was urgent care, which was really hard to do.
Check. Oh, wait, no, never mind.
The other was a community center, which maybe not that hard to do. And the other was transportation for medical rides. And we saw that as a low-hanging fruit. And so thank you, C4C, for doing that. I helped with the research for that, and I just kind of went on my merry way and forgot about it until Tony Landis called me and said, "I've got this software here, Ren. I need your help with it." And it was a ride booking software for booking non-emergency rides. So I said, "Okay, well, I'll help with there." And then here I am 5 years later, and STARS has been around now for 5 years, and we were fiscally sponsored for 4 of those years. We knew immediately that STARS, we needed a robust operation, because when you're booking rides and doing a lot of things like that, we needed our volunteers to be booking rides, driving passengers. And if you don't know what STARS does, we give non-emergency medical rides to people and sisters who can't drive themselves. And so we have a lot of moving parts for our operations, and to add governance, and that's what AFSC did for us, is they were our governance as a 501c3. So we knew that we needed that help, and they were being founded about the same time we were being founded. So I always say that, we were sort of partners in getting these organizations going. And we've learned a lot from each other. STARS, if you don't know, we have about 50 or 60 volunteers in our organization. And so we do have a lot of things going on. We actually grew during COVID, and our ride demand has really grown drastically. Just last month, in a month, we gave 90 rides to people in a month that needed to go to their doctor. And those are people that may not have been able to get to their doctor if we hadn't have been here in Sisters helping. So I'll give a pitch for volunteers. If anyone wants to drive or dispatch for volunteers, we'd love to have you. STARS operated under the fiscal sponsorship, like I said, for 4 years, and it became apparent to both organizations that we needed to fledge and grow up and be our own 501c3. So we used COIC to do a project for us, to look at things. We wanted to either find a new fiscal sponsor, get some kind of agency, or maybe the city or Council on Aging, somebody maybe could absorb us, or we could become our own 501c3. And obviously, since we've done that, we decided to become our own 501c3. At the end of our project with COIC, we found things. We found that Cascade East Transit was a little bit too restrictive for what we do. The other fiscal sponsors that we found didn't match our needs, like I said. And then there were other options, but they were just much more costly for us to undertake. So 2024, we did a methodical transition, and Christy Corzine is in the room. She's our director of our board, our board chair, and she'll talk about the transition. But I'll say that without the great board, our transition would have been more difficult, and without the advice from our fiscal sponsor, AFSC, we couldn't have made the transition successful. Now I'll tell you the 5 things, and then I'll hush, that I think that has made STARS successful. The first one is that we had a clearly defined need from this community. We knew that transportation and medical appointments was a need. We had a dedicated team who believed in the mission, and they had the skills to do the job. We had a fiscal sponsor, which gave us time to build our operations without being overly burdened with the governance and the bookkeeping. We got advice from everyone in this community, AFSC, other nonprofits. This is a good time to say Community Builders is a great resource, and I recommend it. We had got grantor advice, Roundhouse Foundation, Cap Creek Umpqua Indian Foundation, C4C again. And then we have partnerships, and we're working with the Fire Corps right now. Bev is in the room to get some help for us with our database. And so partnerships are really important as a nonprofit. And then the other thing we did is we told our story to engage the community, and the Nugget has been amazing at telling our story. So I think those are the real 5 things that has helped STARS be successful. And I have business cards with me, and there's a couple of people in the room that I've actually had coffee with, Living Well with Dementia and Romeo's Joy, and sat down and really just talked about fiscal sponsorship and what it's like to start a nonprofit or to be under fiscal sponsorship. So if you're interested in that and would like to have coffee with me sometime and go somewhere and just sit down and talk personally, I would love to do that. So please take my business card.
Thanks so much, Rennie. No, that you're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to highlight, I think it's really interesting that, like, when I got my fiscally sponsored project with AFSC, honestly, the main thing I was looking for, at least at first, or so I thought, was just I need a place to, to get these, be able to get these donations. And you really started from the opposite standpoint. You're like, we need the operational support, the board oversight and expertise so that we know how to do the work on the ground, or we think we do, or we need some time to figure that out, but we need some overhead support to really get that started. So I think that's just interesting to paint the picture that folks can come from different places when seeking fiscal sponsorship. That's great. I had one more thing I was going to highlight about your story, and it escaped me. So we'll come back to it. But let's pass it over to Dana, and Mayor Preedin. Feel free to jump in here. I'll let Dana go first, and then the city had a key role in SCLI's start as well. So we want to hear from the city about that as well. But Dana, tell us about SCLI and why you pursued fiscal sponsorship and how that all happened.
Well, is this on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. In listening to everybody, you are way more organized than we ever were. I mean, we would just shoot from the hip and pick up garbage and that's it. But so I represent Sisters Community Leadership Initiative, and I'll refer to it as SCLI from here on out because it's a mouthful. And we are under the fiscal sponsorship of Discover Your Northwest, which is the premier nonprofit that works with public lands in the 5 Northwestern states. So how did SCLI start? Like I said, right place at the right time. It was a creative idea between Jeremy Fields with the Sisters Ranger District, David Fox with Deschutes County Behavioral Health, and a nonprofit named High Desert Peace Kitchen. And that was in August of 22. And at the point I was on the Sisters Cold Weather Shelter Board, and I wanted to get out into the forest and meet more houseless people. Jeremy helped us with a designated route. He facilitated David Fox meeting other houseless people out there. So out we went once a week. High Desert Peace Kitchen had a 200-gallon water distribution system in his pickup. The Forest Service let us use their ratty but useful old trailer, and out we went every week to distribute water and collect garbage. And the plan was, like I said, to be a meaningful effort to get to know people in the houseless encampments around Sisters. So we would give them garbage bags for the next week. They would bag it, and then we would collect it the following week. They would come out with every kind of plastic container for water, and we would fill up single water bottles, old milk jugs, you name it. So that kind of evolved into SCLI providing UV resistant 5-gallon and 2.5-gallon water containers that could be reused. Again, waste reduction as well as health and safety was part of our deal. So again, we were in the right place at the right time when Neighbor Impact in 22 was looking for a fledgling organization to send to a national conference on leadership, which was Community Leadership Initiative, CLI. And so 4 of us were chosen, Jeremy Fields, myself, Bonnie Lamont, and Molly Jones. And we were sent back to Charlotte, North Carolina for a 3-day in-service. As a result of attending that Community Leadership Institute, we were given a $4,000 grant to go back to our community and create a project that would be community oriented. Well, we already were pretty committed to water and garbage, so we said, let's make this sustainable. And so in January of 23, we received that $4,000 grant. Now, when money comes into the play, then everybody goes, whoa, I don't want to have this on my taxes, thank you. So, so I had a business savings account that I wasn't using. And I said, okay, we'll deposit that into this savings account for 2023. But by the time the end of the year is, we've got to be sure that it's all spent so I'm not legally or have a tax liability. So that really does change things when you start looking at tax liabilities, et cetera. So we turned to Age Friendly Sisters, and because they were the local agency that would support fiscal sponsored projects, and had 2 or 3 really productive meetings. And our last one, was really helpful in that they said, we really don't want to take on a longer, more sustainable project because STARS was enough for them at the time. But they really helped us understand what fiscal sponsorship was versus a 501c3 and gave us a lot of shape to what we were doing and how we should move forward. So they were key in our knowledge base of where we wanted to go. Again, Jeremy Fields was part of our leadership team and a liaison with the Forest Service and said, okay, there is Discover Your Northwest. And a local agency here is Discover Your Forest out of Bend, which is under the Discover Your Northwest parent company. So we met with Karen Walsh from Discover Your Northwest in person, and she again helped us define where we were going, what we could do and what we couldn't do if we went under that fiscal sponsorship. We then arranged a Zoom meeting. Whoa, 3 minutes, 3 seconds. What? 3 minutes left? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, for both of us. Oh,
If we had a
Here we go.
3-second warning, that would be terrifying and also kind of odd.
That 3 minutes.
Cut off your mic, Diana. In 3, 2, 1.
Okay, all right. So where was I? Getting connected. So it was wonderful. We came on board with Discovery Northwest. They have been an incredible support service. They govern, they administer, they handle our finances. We get a monthly financial statement from them. They help us with guidance and direction. We just had an issue with the Forest Service where we needed to blend some finances. And so we did a Zoom call with Discovery Northwest, and they came out with a plan, a 3-year plan as to how we should move forward. So we are so grateful and so very relieved to be under their fiscal sponsorship, because when you're dealing with houselessness, you can go down a rabbit hole here and there and everywhere. And it really helped us define our lane and consistently stay in our lane, being under their sponsorship. So they've been wonderful.
Thanks, Dana. Mayor Preedin,
You've got a minute.
Well, we called you up here because I think it's also great to highlight that there's a lot of, public-private partnerships that exist here in Sisters, and the city has been pretty integral to a lot of school sponsorship organizations here in town. So
absolutely. I think the most important thing that I want to talk to you about is we provide the trash bags for SCLI, and that's it.
Great, moving on. Okay.
No, seriously, we've been involved with SCLI ever since Dana came to us at the very, very beginning, and it was a great partnership from the get-go. Communication is so important. Obviously, the city is dealing with houselessness on all scales, and seeing somebody come forward that wants to say, hey, we just want to give them a little water and clean up the trash and make sure that the forest is picked up once a week. Come forward and say, hey, can you help us do that? We're like, yeah, let's do that. So we've been working with them side by side from the get-go. And in fact, I am a volunteer member of SCLI, and I go out in the forest once a month with them because I love how it's so narrowly focused. It's easy. Even a dummy like the mayor can go out and pick up trash, right? So I really believe that when it's simple, it's like a laser beam. It's more focused, it just zoom, you get that one thing done. And that's why there's 150 or so nonprofits in this community, because most of them, not all of them, Bill, but most of them are kind of concentrated on one thing, and they can just get that one thing done, and everybody else is doing other things, and it works really well. The other couple of points about working with the City of Sisters, we have a staff of about 19 people at the city. Many of them have been there for 10 or 20 years. They just know people. They know how to talk to other people in the community. If you walked into City Hall and had a question, they can probably answer it. And if they can't answer it, they can get you to the right person in the community. Whether it's nonprofit, not nonprofit, it doesn't matter. We just are a clearinghouse for a lot of information. And the last thing I'll highlight, is this the right time to talk about the community grant program? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Okay. We do have a community grant program where we give out a good amount of money to nonprofits. We take applications in the late spring for the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1. The awards come out in July, and then checks are cut within weeks, pretty fast to the people that get awarded grants. Just this last year, I was very proud that I personally put into place that it went from 20,000 to 30,000. It just wasn't enough money. We could probably do a little more, but it's just, we have to be fiscally responsible as a government as well. So we have to, this is tax money that we are giving away. So we can't just give it all away, even though it would be really fun one year, maybe. But we do have to pay for roads and water and all that other stuff too. So remember the community grant program when, in the late spring when it comes up.
And the community grant program has supported fiscally sponsored projects. So, and that would not have gotten that support had they not been fiscally sponsored, because the city's only given it to 501c3s. Is that correct? Oh, anybody? Okay, well, never mind then. I stand corrected. Well, then why'd I do all that fiscally sponsored? No, just kidding. Yeah, raise your hand if you've gotten a grant from the city. Oh my goodness, most people here. And there's a lot of these, you know, sort of, we'll get to the how to fund it part later, but this is a great prelude to this. Yeah. Yeah. Is there a question? To be eligible for a grant, does one need to be a resident of Sisters?
I don't think so. It's, you know, Sisters Country. We have many of the events such as the rodeo and other events, and some of, you know, like the rodeo is not really based in Sisters. It's kind of outside Sisters. So, it does not have to be Sisters within the city. It can be Sisters Country. I'm sure some of these organizations, their mailing addresses are maybe not even in the city of Sisters.
And those eligibility requirements you can find on the city website for the next grant cycle coming up next summer. So just to wrap things up on the fiscally sponsored side of things, you know, I've heard a few takeaways here that I wanted to highlight. One is, it seems for all of these examples of fiscal sponsorship that when a project is discrete, like when someone knows, like, I want to do this, I want to do non-emergency rides, I want to do trash and water in the forest. My fiscally sponsored project was diaper changing stations for local businesses. Like, those discrete projects seem like they align really well with fiscal sponsorship, where someone's like, I want to do the work, let me get to it as quickly as possible, and someone else can do all of the overhead and bookkeeping. Raise your hand if you started a nonprofit or joined a nonprofit because you just wanted to do the bookkeeping part of it, or you wanted to do the board service part of it. All right, there's one nerd in the room, nobody else, but you know, most of us, you know, who are looking to do community building work, that's not why you get into it. And so I feel like that's a pitch for fiscal sponsorship in and of itself, right? Is like, you get to do the work and they get to do the rest, right? So is there any other, like, you know, sound bites or talking points related to fiscal sponsorship that I missed here that y'all want to highlight?
We're so fortunate to have such a close alignment with Discover Northwest and public lands all around the nation. So if you can find a good match, it really, really works well.
Yeah, I think that there's two things that suit fiscal sponsorship really well. If you're an organization like STARS, and partly our organization was proof of concept because we needed to prove that this concept was going to work. And it was something that we really didn't know, but it gave us the capacity to do that. And I think the other thing may be short-term projects that you want to you have one thing that you would like to get done and you'd like to see it through. And that kind of project, I think, would be well suited to AFSC too. So in my mind, those are the two things that you're proving a concept, or you have a short-term project that is well suited to fiscal sponsorship and AFSC in particular.
That proof of concept is a really great point, because starting a nonprofit takes time, it takes resources, and if you don't even know if it's a good idea or not, fiscal sponsorship gives you a chance to sort of test the waters. Peggy?
I just had one thing to add on kind of from the other side of that. And this was in conversations that I had with the founding individuals for AFSC, was that they came from it when they went through the process with the nonprofit, that they really made a very educated decision that their concept fit more than one. They wanted to be able to apply their nonprofit status to more than just one definitive reason. So just using that, the domains of livability was a key part in them choosing the fiscal sponsorship kind of portion of being a nonprofit. So it can work both ways, but I know AFSC is very happy that we can have a broader effect on the community by having numerous domains or kind of tentacles of support.
Feeling is mutual. Bill?
I
Final word
just
here?
close up, find the right partner. I can't agree with that more, because even if you're starting out looking for that, if it's the wrong idea for the wrong group, it's going to be wrong. So find the right partner to make sure that you're working together in sync. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of frustration.
You're so profound, Bill. If it's the wrong idea for the wrong group, it's going to be wrong. All right. Noted. All right. Put that on a bumper sticker. Any questions from the audience about fiscal sponsorship here? And again, highlighting that these folks are readily available to chat anytime. Yes. The question was, is it clear when a fiscal sponsorship should cease for one reason or another?
Well,
How do you know when
I-
it's done?
I think there was a mutual agreement with STARS and AFSC, but this was the first action team that we had that, just because of the breadth of the organization with their volunteers, that they reached a point where fiscally, they were paying an administrative fee to AFSC, and it became apparent that they could be covering the same expenses with that administrative fee, or even come out ahead on that. And then with AFSC, one of the items was just the scope was also to a point where it was more management than that we could really feel that we could handle.
Rennie, something to add there?
I would just say too, it just felt right. And we did again have COIC help us through that process, and that was meaningful. But we are so operational that it was a little bit scary to leave our fiscal sponsorship, because we needed extra people. We needed a board. And so we had to go out and find people that would come aboard and help us with that governance piece. We needed a treasurer, because we weren't going to have a treasurer anymore. We needed a board chair that knew about governance, and we needed expertise that we did not have. And so we had to go fishing, and we were very lucky that we caught some big fish. And so we transitioned very successfully, and we had help from AFSC. But I do think that when you transition, that is a big thing that you have to think about, because like Kellen said, people are looking for board members all the time, and you have to have board members fit too. And so that was a thing, the big thing that STARS had to do and make sure that we did before we could leave AFSC and transition into our own.
Sounds like oh, sorry, Deanna, go ahead.
So coming from our fledgling baby organization, I don't want to ever be a 501c3. I love having somebody else do it, and we just get to do what we're doing. Hopefully it'll stay that way.
So different strokes for different folks, but
Absolutely.
from the stories you said earlier too, it sounds like the more proactive you can be in terms of describing your aspirations, whether it's to fly the coop and become your own big nonprofit someday, or to stay fiscally sponsored, but having a proactive conversation with your fiscal sponsor about that will ensure you stay on the same page as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's ongoing, and it's always a pleasure to do Zoom meetings with them to problem solve, and they have all the expertise. And so we're kind of a one-trick pony here.
Great. Jim, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand raised too. Sue. COIC stands for Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, and we will have Julia come up and speak in a moment here to talk more about it. Any other questions about fiscal sponsorship right now? Congratulations, you've achieved level 3. Next up is level 4. Thank you to these panelists. So I'm going to encourage folks, if you want to stretch your legs, grab a little bit of a snack. While you're doing that, I'm going to invite my next 3 panelists to come up here to talk about starting a nonprofit. They are Debbie McCune, Nick. Oh, is it Nick? There you are. There, Nick Tierney with COIC. Sorry, not Julia. Coming up, and Christy with STARS. And we'll continue in just a couple minutes. I love that so many people are networking. That's probably the most valuable thing that you're going to get out of this event. The relationships, but we do have some other very exciting content that, so I would encourage you to return to your seats so we can get started with the nonprofit side of things. Okay. Wait, where's Debbie? Debbie. So you sat through that whole presentation and everybody talking about how fiscal sponsorship's so much easier than starting a nonprofit, and other people will do the overhead for you and it's a piece of cake. And you said, no, I want to do. Hello? I want to do it the hard way. So, all right, for whatever reason, that didn't make sense for you. What is the hard way? Well, that would be starting a full-fledged nonprofit yourself, which can sound maybe a little bit intimidating, but we've got some folks up here who have done so and or supported those who have done so and lived to tell the tale. So we're going to hear from them here. So I'm not sure who to start with here. So this is whoever wants to take this one can shout it out. Folks, actually, why don't we let you each introduce yourself first? Sorry, I should have allowed you to all do that. We'll go down the line and introduce yourselves.
I'm Christy Corzine, and I'm a volunteer with Sisters Transportation and Rideshare, fondly known as STARS.
You're also the board chair, right?
I'm a driver and the board chair.
Volunteer and you checked like 5 of the boxes on that volunteer list earlier, huh? Okay, great. Nick.
Hey everyone, Nick Tierney. I'm a program coordinator at COIC, our region's Council of Governments. So we serve Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson counties. We're based in Bend. We have offices all over. I think the best way to summarize what we do, our executive director's email tagline is "in service to our region." So.
And I am blind, Debbie McCune with Living Well with Dementia. I am one of the co-founders with Bill and executive director and a few other hats, but that's it for tonight.
So I've got a few questions that are kind of directed at all of y'all, and then we do have 2 sort of case studies here, if you will, with STARS and Living Well to speak about. But just to start at a high level, talk to me, any of you who want to take this one, talk to me about what are the key attributes of a nonprofit. What distinguishes a nonprofit from a for-profit, and what distinguishes a nonprofit from like a fiscally sponsored entity? There will be I'll be scoring these answers. So,
Well, having served on the board of both a for-profit corporation and several nonprofit corporations, maybe I can take a stab at that. So I would say that the nonprofit corporations are a lot more fun.
step 1. Okay, got it.
They both require boards, and they both require tax filings, and they both require work. Normally with a nonprofit, you have a large volunteer component. With STARS, we're all volunteer organization. With a for-profit corporation, obviously that's like where you go and get a job and have a career and work.
I have a job up at a nonprofit. Excuse me. I get paid.
Although many nonprofit corporations are fortunate to be able to hire staff.
All right. Sorry. I should have let you finish. Other folks want to talk about some of the key attributes of a nonprofit? Anyone want popcorn from the room? Anyone?
I think from having worked in corporate America and now working as a nonprofit, I have to say it's immensely fabulous for my soul. It's deeply rewarding, and that is probably my main motivation. Plus, I have been a community educator for the Alzheimer's Association, and I've done that for about the last 4.5 years. So it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, besides the by the book answer, right, that a nonprofit doesn't have any profit, it doesn't have shareholders, it brings all of its revenues either expended or back into the company. A nonprofit can kind of be anything, and I think you'll find a lot of nonprofits are anything. They don't fit into a box. There is a lot of overlap between for-profits and nonprofits and the type of work that they decide to do, but yeah, I think the big thing and kind of what Debbie was saying is they're mission driven. They're often serving a purpose or for one specific thing.
Great point. Thank you. Yeah, some sort of charitable mission, giving back to the community in some way, and with profits reinvested in the organization, and also very fulfilling work, whether it's volunteer paid, what have you. Let's talk about a few of the key steps to starting and maintaining a nonprofit. And if we start getting into the storytelling aspect with Living Well or Stars here, by all means, but I'd love to just hear from y'all more about, okay, so someone decides they want to start a nonprofit. What does that mean? How do you go about it? Is there you just say you are? Debbie.
Let me help you out here, Kellen. Starting a nonprofit as a 501c3, if you're risk adverse, you really should probably consider going with a fiscal sponsor. I'll just say that right off the bat. And we're very fortunate in that the three of us, Bill, Kelly, Sandy Riley, and myself, we all had a diverse background that we brought to the table. And we decided we had met with Age-Friendly Sisters Country. As Bill had shared already,
Well, it is being recorded, so maybe just if you're able to hold it a little bit further away, I think that'll work better.
Thank you. A lesson on microphone holding. Thanks, Kellen. Better. Okay. I could hear myself popping. I was freaking my own self out. Okay. Anyway, back to the point. So one of the things that we had done, as Bill had said, we had an event here a year ago in June, and realized that we had the potential for a serious need for those who have dementia and their care partners in our local community. So from there, and I'll get to my point here, Kellen, to answer your question, is we did our research. We did the background to see if we felt like there was a need, but was there truly a need? And so that's why we did the survey. And that's why we also had a resource summit from different agencies here in Central Oregon to see who serves sisters. And guess what? Only one. Lots of people served Redmond and lots of people served Bend, but no one serves sisters. So that's how we came up with Living Well with Dementia Sisters, to fill that need that we have here in our local community. And your question is?
So okay, let's make it a two-parter. One, why did you decide to go the nonprofit route instead of the fiscal sponsorship route? And two, once you decided to go to the nonprofit route, what were the literal steps to becoming a nonprofit?
So thank you. We did meet with Age-Friendly Sisters Country as we had started putting our plan together and built our pillars, knowing what we started with our vision and our mission statement. So we had some of our core elements that we were going to need for a business when we met with Age-Friendly Sisters Country. And we were very appreciative of the service that they provide, and they really helped us fine-tune what we were looking for. And the reason we went the fast track is in our research, we determined that based on our threshold of actually receiving 50,000 or less is what one of the minimum thresholds was going to be. We knew we were going to be that qualifier for that first year. So we just went out and we were able to go through the expedited process of filling out a 501c3. So the first thing you're going to have to do is register your business with the state. You're going to make sure that it's available. Then you're going to make sure that there's a URL for all the reasons we need websites today. Once we had that and we knew that we're going to be a nonprofit, then we went through the research with the IRS to make sure that we were going to qualify and could go the expedited path on a 501c3 process. And that's what we did. And so we had it within 3 weeks. We didn't have to wait. Normally it's about a 6-month process. So we got after it. We knew what we were going to be doing and we were able to just get after it. Then we had to have a board, we had to have our bylaws, we had all of that in place, which we've done. We have our business account. So part of it also was knowing that receiving funds for grants and just legacy gifts and local donors, being a 501c3 when it's a tax, potential write-off makes it a little easier for people to donate. So that was another reason that we went that path.
So I heard a few key steps that I want to call out. One was registering with Secretary of State and or the feds, establishing a board, creating bylaws. There was another one at the end there that escaped me, but bank accounts. So like the financial mechanisms for spending and receiving money. So those are all pretty complex. Was that just knowledge that y'all had in-house, or how did you even know that those were the steps that you needed to take? I'm really trying to get down to if there's someone here who's trying to start a nonprofit, what is the how do they know that those are the steps?
Google and experience.
Good. I've heard the internet never lies, so that's good. Okay.
No, and don't trust your first answer, always dig deep. So really, truly, because of the experience, we're fortunate. If you aren't sure, that's what makes fiscal sponsors potentially the right path for you. But all three of the co-founders of Living Well with Dementia, we have experience in having our own businesses. So we knew we were able to do, we're going to be able to check some of those boxes pretty quickly, registering, literally going out to Google business registries, state of Oregon. And then you just plug in the name and it's truly, truly simple. This is the name we wanted. Living Well with Dementia was already taken. I added sisters, we got it. So that's how we came up with Living Well with Dementia Sisters. It's kind of that easy. So from there, once we had that registered, you pick, do you want the state? Do you want by county? That's, literally one of the very first steps. Then I went out to, you have to get an EIN number, which is a business version of a social security number. Employee identification number is what it stands for, which we did. And you have to have that in order to file 501c3. And, and the thing that I will tell you, it sounds pretty scary, but it really, any of these, once you get started, that I did say, if you're risk adverse, it's not the path for you. But if you're willing to trust your instincts and just go for it, they really are, the steps, the websites do walk you through it pretty easily. So yes.
Ooh. All right. So the advice was that Deschutes Public Library and booking a librarian can be a wealth of information, but that finding board members who are well aligned is difficult. We will, I'm sure, touch on that in just a moment. Christy, why don't you tell us a little bit about the STAR story, and then Nick, we'll go to you next about some of COIC and how you'll support nonprofits.
Sure. So I think Kellen said something about we're going to have a panel of experts up here. And I just want you to know that, as Debbie indicated, I'm not an expert in this, but it was fairly easy to navigate through the process because the Secretary of State Department of Corporations website has very clear instructions, and their forms you can submit online, and they also will actually talk to you if you call and ask questions. So Secretary of State Department of Corporations, lots of information. They have templates. The Nonprofit Association of Oregon, NAO, has a lot of information. I did find that some of their templates are out of date, but they have a lot of really good information. And if you're a member, you can attend their seminars and conferences at a discount, and they're based out of Eugene. And then there's a group called the Center for Nonprofit Law that's also in Eugene. That's a law firm that specializes in nonprofit organizations. And so if you have a more complicated situation, or if you just don't have the bandwidth within your volunteers to do it all, they can help you with a small part of your process or all of your process. And they offer a 1-hour free consultation. And so that's another option. In terms of The STARS story, I kind of wanted to back up a little because we weren't an either or fiscal sponsor or nonprofit status independent. We did both. So
Overachievers. So impressed.
as Rennie mentioned, we were under AFSC originally as kind of to prove our concept and see if this giving of non-emergency medical rides was going to be a sustainable service we could offer in our community. And it turns out that the people that started STARS and are mostly still with the organization were very dedicated and compassionate group of volunteers and really believe in the mission. And I think that's the main reason it has succeeded. When AFSC let us know that it was time to pledge, we originally, I think that we thought we were going to try to find another fiscal sponsor because it just seems easier, and that's the way we've been operating, and we would just do that. So our decision process was pretty elaborate, I would say. We had 2 facilitated sessions, and out of one of those sessions, we came up with a updated mission statement and our vision. And also out of that came our 3 options that Rennie mentioned before. The first being to find another fiscal sponsor. The second being become our own separate independent 501c3. And the third being to go under some government organization like the City of Sisters or under COIC, who runs Cascades East Transit. And so we decided to hire COIC, and Nick was one of the primary authors of the research study they did for us to determine what the advantages and disadvantages were of each of those 3 options. And so we had the facilitated sessions, we had the sustainability study, and then also Rennie and I and a couple other members of our organization went out and we interviewed a bunch of different organizations to find out who could be partners for us, who could be a fiscal sponsor, or who might we model. And so we had a pretty robust process, and I feel like we really were inclusive with all of the people involved in STARS in evaluating that decision. So it was an informed process. After the second facilitated session, we came up with a long list of tasks to transition from fiscal sponsorship to our own independent nonprofit. And so we formed 3 committees, a governance committee, a finance committee, and an operations committee to take on all of those tasks. And the first thing we needed to do was recruit a board. And so we recruited 3 board members for the application. Yeah, that's the minimum number you can have. We now have 5 board members. And 2 of those board members were people already involved with the STARS management team, and one was someone recruited from outside the STARS organization. And I would say that as STARS grows over the next couple of years, we're going to be looking to add some talent from the community to add some additional skill sets to our board. We had the board then adopt the bylaws and the articles of incorporation and a conflict of interest statement. So your mission statement, your bylaws, your articles of incorporation, and your conflict of interest policy. Those are the 4 things you need to get through the process. So then there's 4 steps, 2 with the state and 2 with the feds. And first, you need to apply to become a corporation with the Secretary of State's office. And that takes like 4 to 6 weeks. And then once you have that, and you are a corporation in the state of Oregon, then you can apply for your EIN that Debbie mentioned, the entity identification number, and that's with the IRS. That takes about 24 hours. You can just submit it online. It happens very quickly. And then you can apply for tax exempt status under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. And that's with the feds, of course. And that is a $275 fee and takes about 4 to 6 weeks. And then the last step is back with the state again. Once you receive your determination from the IRS, then you register your nonprofit with the State Department of Justice. So first the state, then 2 federal things, and then the last one with the state. And that's pretty much it.
I think it's really interesting to hear. I heard you say shoot from the hip, and I heard you say like a long thought out, inclusive, laborious process, but you both ended up in with 501c3 status. I guess there's different ways to go about this. One thing, just to clarify, it sounds like, Debbie, one of the reasons it was so much more efficient for y'all is maybe you were starting from scratch as opposed to, determining exactly the right process for shifting and what you wanted to do next, but also there was maybe a financial cap in terms of how big of an organization you anticipated being, and that's why it was an expedited process. Is that right?
Yes, for the first year.
For the first year, I see. Okay.
So the 50,000 cap is how much the amount of monies that we can receive the first year. Once we exceed that, then it changes. And it doesn't change other than if you're going to receive 60,000 the first year, you wouldn't be eligible for going through the expedited process.
Got it.
So that was the trigger. That was the difference. And can I add just one more thing?
Please. Yeah.
And thank you. That was a very well articulated outline. So I think not only do you have an idea and a vision of what you're thinking, but really one of the things that I would highly recommend first is doing a business plan. And I know that sounds probably pretty elementary, but in your business plan, you're going to identify your own areas of opportunities, your strengths, your weaknesses. Who is your niche? What are you wanting to achieve your goals? And what that process does, it can help you refine, is this really what I want to do? And what is it going to look like? So a business plan to begin with is pretty basic.
I feel like, were you going to add something there, Christy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, being fiscally sponsored under AFSC, we had all that stuff already in place. So it gave us time to be able to have a more thoughtful process and be more deliberate about it. We didn't have to rush to try and get our organization in place and approved to be able to get started providing our service, because we were already doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Speaking of business plans, COIC has some support services in that realm. So Nick, I'd love to just hear more about how you've supported STARS and other organizations in going down this path.
Yeah, so as the Council of Governments, we kind of come in at any level and we can provide services at any point in the journey. One particular program that COIC runs is called the Rural Community Building Program. It basically exists to support community leaders as they try to get their ideas from idea stage into implementation. And so with that service, we've been able to help the Newberry Regional Partnership, which is a group down in the Lapine area in South Deschutes County that have basically started from a very similar storyline as a lot of the groups here. But it was, we have a need in the area, in the Lapine area, it was, we have a lot of people who live outside of city limits and they need a place to go to find services. They don't feel like they're well represented. Let's try to create a space for them to come and to get their ideas and concerns heard, especially as South Deschutes County is growing and changing. And so COIC stepped in to help them sort of execute what it would look like to provide a space in South Deschutes County. And out of that process was the Newberry Regional Partnership. And so we've been helping sort of facilitate, table set, run meetings, take board meeting minutes, do everything for this group while they get started and get off the ground. And so that's something that we'll often play for community organizations here. Another service that we provide is the service that we did for STARS, which is we can help basically an organization wherever they're at sort of decide what the right next step is. And I think the way that we're able to do that is because we're not tied to any one area. in Central Oregon. We represent the 3 counties equally, and we often come in as a neutral party to help you get your ideas heard and to create a space for you all to come together and to share them. So yeah, it's not a prescriptive set of services. We're pretty flexible as an organization, but usually if there's a need and there's energy in the community, we'll find a way to make it happen.
Is that all for free, or do you charge for that?
It depends. The rural community building program is all for free. On a case-by-case basis, there may be some fees associated with it, but again, we don't fit into the for-profit model, and we definitely aren't out here to make a buck. So we're just covering our services at the end of the day.
So just get on your good side. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Cool. I think just to highlight for folks here, one of the things I've heard is there's a bevy of organizations out there to help people go through this nonprofit process, and not just Dr. Google, but also like COIC, Connect Central Oregon, who I mentioned earlier during the volunteer component. They also have a wide array of these types of services that are designed to help people make their idea a reality, everything from volunteering up to starting their own nonprofit and helping incubate nonprofit projects. So that's another one to take a look at. You mentioned the organization in Eugene again, Center for Nonprofit Law, was that it? And there was one that someone else mentioned earlier. So there's all these entities that are available to help sort of hold people's hand through the process. You don't have to go it alone is kind of a key takeaway I'm hearing. That's great. Yeah, were you going to say something else, Nick?
I was just going to, someone had a question in the audience about how do you find and retain board members. And I personally don't have a lot of experience in recruiting board members, but I can just speak from the NRP experience. I think they got lucky because a lot of the people that saw the need for it were also invested in getting the organization get off the ground. But one thing that's kind of come up lately is because it is, and often in these situations, it's such a mission and passion driven organization, you have to be really careful about like balance of responsibilities and burnout. And I think people, boards of directors are all volunteer, and it often is up to the organization to kind of set the onus on what do we want to get out of this and who are we looking to do that work. And it's helpful to have a continuous and open conversation with board members because they're hard to get, and you want to keep them once you do get them.
That's a good point. Yeah, speaking from C4C's perspective, I think one of the ways that we've at least gotten prospective new board members is by seeing who's interested in our work, which is a great place to start, right? Like if someone is showing up again and again, well, okay, start cultivating that. If someone is volunteering, if someone is continuing to lean in, it's a sign that maybe there's some mission alignment there. But I think kind of to your point as well, that has to be filling a need for the organization as well. If you just get a bunch of people in the room who are joining because they're passionate about something, that's great, but that's not necessarily serving the long-term sustainability of the organization, because there are specific things that a board needs to achieve in terms of fiscal responsibility, in terms of strategic planning. And so having people that can serve in those particular targeted roles and knowing what you need before you start just recruiting board members willy-nilly is really important. Like Jim here, he has a background in, financial expertise with nonprofits, and Sarah has a background in project management. So we have different people that are holding different assets and strengths and expertise for the organization. And that's been one of the most valuable things, I think, in terms of our board cohesion. Anything else y'all want to say about boards?
Yeah, just recruiting a diversity of skill sets on your board.
Well, we've sort of taken people through nonprofits 101. The Deschutes Public Library. That was the other resource I was going to mention. Thank you for mentioning that earlier. We've taken people through nonprofits 101. We are right on time as always. Oh gosh. Are there other questions about the bare bones of starting a nonprofit? Yes. I have a ton of resources that I'd be happy to share with you about alternative ownership models outside of the traditional nonprofit framework. And so there's a lot of different models of organizations out there beyond a standard for-profit entity and a standard nonprofit entity. And they're growing. There's a new form here in Oregon called steward ownership. There's co-ops. There's mutual aid groups. There's things that are much less formal. And I will put some of those in the takeaway resource packets so that people can learn more about them as well. And happy to chat more. Anything else someone was going to, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think there's more information on the IRS charitable activities section website. And I know just in the application form that there are different things that are required depending on the type of organization. So like religious organizations, the requirements are different from educational versus charitable activity, public benefit charities and things like that. So I didn't read it all because I only read the part I needed. And like Debbie, I was looking for that 50,000 cutoff process, to file the easy form. But I saw that there was a lot of information on their website.
Start.coop is a great website to start. Literally start.coop. A lot of resources for people that are looking to start a co-op. Well, I'm sure that you have completely figured out how to start a nonprofit just from this, 30-minute rapid fire session. But again, there are people here in the room and a lot of other resources we mentioned that are keen to help support you as you go through that process. So thank you for this deep dive, or this, whatever you want to call it, rapid fire deep dive. And we're going to get to the part that I'm sure that y'all have been waiting for, which is the money aspect of all of this, right? How do you fund it if you have a good idea? So let's give these panelists a round of applause. While they're taking their seats, I'd love to invite up Susan and Aaron and Rennie and Julia for our last discussion of the day. And while they're coming up, I'm going to mention something that Aaron asked me to mention that I didn't quite squeeze into that section, which was this concept of a public support test, which is another requirement for a nonprofit, which basically means that about a third of your funding needs to come from small donors, from people that basically it demonstrates that you have the public's support for your idea. So when you're thinking about starting a nonprofit, one thing that's important is diversifying your revenue streams, diversifying where your money's coming from. And so these esteemed panelists up here are going to tell us about what some of those revenue streams are and how to find them. So why don't we go rapid fire down the line again? And we already know who Rennie is, but from there on, why don't we let these folks introduce themselves?
Hi, everybody. It's so exciting to see folks here. My name's Erin Borla. I'm the executive director and a trustee of the Roundhouse Foundation just up the road.
Excellent. I'm Susan Taylor. I am with the Grant Lab, which is a nonprofit consulting firm, and we write grants for nonprofits.
I'm Julia Baumgartner. I'm the Community Development Program Manager at COIC, the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council.
Great. So when we were brainstorming for this session, we started off by talking about like, okay, so where can the funding come from? And then we realized we kind of needed to take a step back, and that it's important to understand why fundraising is important and to understand what your strategy is for fundraising. So I'm going to point to Susan first, since I think you were the one who posed this question. I know you suggested it, so I'm going to throw it right back at you. So Susan, why do you need to fundraise for a nonprofit? Why does that matter?
Well, you have to pay for stuff. So
okay, thanks. All right. Next question. Great.
Did it. Nailed it. I mean, as you all who have started your nonprofits know, as you know, even if you don't have paid staff for your nonprofit, there are many, many costs that you come up against. And one thing Aaron and I just talked about was insurance. And doesn't matter what kind of nonprofit you have to have insurance. You probably have to have a QuickBooks subscription, all a website, all these things, they cost money. And so you have to raise that money from somewhere. And when you're a small nonprofit, a lot of times that startup money comes from you, the volunteers, the folks, the founders who are starting your nonprofit. But once you get a little bigger and more sophisticated and you need some other resources, as Kellen said, you really need to start diversifying your resources. And, if you imagine a pie chart, those come from all those places where Kellen also mentioned. And was it level 1? Only from the other side, right? It's, you need to ask for major gifts, legacy gifts, annual gifts, grants. There's a lot of different places where you can get some of those funds. Did I hit that?
That was great. And Julie, I just realized that I missed your logo on this page, and I'm so sorry. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. So I'll throw it to you next, just as I grovel here. I'd love to hear a bit about, Susan just mentioned, kind of alluded to, like, not just, or explaining why funding is important, but also that there's got to be a method to this madness. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts around fundraising strategy and what goes into identifying, what that fundraising strategy, like how much money do you need, where should it come from? You did this sort of research for STARS as they were getting started. So maybe if you want to chip in here as well, but I'd love to just hear a bit about that, the thoughtfulness that should go into that process before you just go out and start trying to raise funds.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what your scale is and where you're at in terms of, if you're already a nonprofit or an organization that, is not quite formed, or you just have an idea. I think it kind of depends on what your scale is and what your goals are, and how you can kind of, start with that kind of business plan or with your idea of projecting out ahead. But if you're, speaking to kind of what Nick said, our focus really is on this rural community building program, which is kind of an alternative focus to traditional kind of community development that oftentimes happens kind of at the city level or the community level. And our program specifically is funded by the Ford Family Foundation, and they have a whole rural community building initiative out of this program. And the focus is to really start small. And so that's kind of why we're here, is like it fits really well with this idea of like, what do you do with an idea? And how do you start at a really small scale within a community of like, what is your focus and how are you responding to a need? And so I think that's a lot of what COIC can support with is some of that facilitation of getting the right people together to kind of understand what assets do you have, where are your gaps, where are your needs, and then how do you kind of go from there to figure out what you really need and what you need money for and how you can do that in a sustainable way. So I think moving beyond, like this, just folks donating their time or donating resources, but how can you move beyond that to get access to other types of funding that can help your organization or your mission become more sustainable in the long term.
Rennie, anything you want to add around that fundraising strategy side of things?
Well, I think the thing that helps is, as boring as it sounds, is to have a budget process, because you know what you need and you need to have to start to forecast those needs for the year. So it's really hard to talk to people, a grantor or anyone else, if you don't exactly know what your needs are. And so I think the budgeting process is good for any organization. I don't care how big you are, how small you are, and fiscal sponsorship initially helped us with that. I think having a kind of a clear vision of what you are going to need that money for and what you're going to use it for, and I think you need to be able to articulate your story about what you need. So I think you're absolutely right, is just understanding what your needs are, and they're going to change. I mean, budget is a forecast, and so you have to be realistic about, you don't know what's going to happen during the year, but I do think you need to sit down and go through that process.
So really knowing what you're asking for before you start asking for it sounds really important. Aaron, is it true that foundations typically want to have some thoughtfulness put into their grant applications and that you're not just handing out dollars willy-nilly?
Well, I would love one of those, what is it, like a gun that all the dollars shoot out? Yeah, that'd be really great.
wouldn't
I
we
know,
all?
right? It'd be really a lot of fun. I think if Rennie could be at every organization, it'd be really lovely. Understanding expectations that you have within your own organization, within your own vision, what that looks like, who you're trying to serve, and how you're building relationship. Kellen, you started the conversation today really talking about know what's in the community already, know who's here. Because as a grantor, and our organization works across rural Oregon, similar to Ford Family Foundation. So I was in Brookings last weekend. I was in Tillamook the weekend before. So we're seeing all these different folks, and those are all the questions that we're asking: is there another organization in your community that's already doing this work, and how are you working with them? And what is your lane that you're staying in that's slightly different, and why is that important? And oftentimes, how do we work together, right? I love a good budget. That's really a great thing, especially even if you have a small organization, even if you need something very, very small. I need $500. You know, I look at the Sisters Community Thanksgiving dinner a lot. I love the ladies that put that on every year. That is not a nonprofit. They are just doing it because it's the right thing to do. And they'll tell you, you know what, we need $500 because Raise does great things and Mart shows up and community members show up. But man, we need $500. And that would help us get all these additional, you know, pies or cookies or whatever else that they need. And so they have that plan, even though it's a very, very small concept. So knowing what that looks like ahead of time, I know, you know, Susan's working with bigger grants too, as far as like federal and state and the city. I know our mayor here would love to see a good budget when he's trying to put things together. So those basic things are really, really critical. And the first thing we tend to ask when we meet with new partners. You have anything you want to add?
I have a pro tip here, which is if you are looking for a great budget template for a project-based budget template for asking for money, I recommend that you apply for a grant from Roundhouse Foundation because they provide a budget template. And I personally have used that to secure grants from other foundations as well. So it's a strong template. I think I'll leave it with Aaron and Susan in the middle for a second here. You know, Aaron, you started talking about, you know, foundations as one source of grants and what you look for as a philanthropic donor. But there's a lot of places where one can get funding from. It doesn't just have to come in the form of a grant from a foundation. So could y'all tell me about some of the other sources of funding out there? And I guess this is open to really anyone here.
Well, I'll start. I think one thing that we always look at is community support, right? So we talked about the relationships and who do you know that you're working with and how are you building relationships and leveraging those pieces together? But it's also how is community supporting your concept? So are they coming in with a number of volunteer hours? Are they coming in with other support? And we talk a lot about right sizing your request. So just because we have an application that's available up to $50,000, if you don't need $50,000 for your whole project, it's not going to be as successful as you would think it's going to be. We call that model spray and pray often, where you apply for everything at the maximum amount and you just hope something comes through. It's not the most successful. All foundations tend to talk to each other as well. We do a really good job of communicating on the back end because we're trying to make it easier for community. I know it doesn't feel like that. I promise we are. I really do. We work really hard together to be able to communicate. So who's looking for these projects? Who's doing these types of things? And not everything is going to be in our wheelhouse. So how can we better support our community to access those needs and those services is by connecting them with folks that are doing that type of funding. So if there's something very specific that one funder that we work with knows, oh my gosh, I really love I love food banking. I only want to fund food banking. We're going to be able to connect folks that are doing that service to those organizations. And that's part of our role as well. But I think that right sizing your request is the biggest piece. So really understanding what your needs are and how you can accomplish those needs together.
So it sounds like there's a lot of foundations out there that are also like geared towards different, I mean, just like nonprofits have different missions, foundations have different missions, right? And so they're funding you have to do your research to figure out which ones are aligned and more likely to support your organization. Let's go to Susan next and then Rennie, because I saw you both keen to jump on the mic.
Oh, yeah. Well, I kind of lost my train of thought.
So I started with, what are some other sources of funding beyond just grants or private foundation grants?
I think Aaron hit a lot of that. One thing I was going to say about the grants specifically is if you do start small and write a couple of grants and you're not successful, you can always call the program officer. And this was actually really helpful for me last year with Roundhouse Foundation, that I didn't understand one of the blind spots that I had with the grant that kept getting rejected. And I was finally able to talk to a program officer. And they said, well, here's some of the feedback we got from our reviewers. And boy, it was something I just never would have thought about, that multiple people had turned down our grants because I was coming to this grant writing process through my own lens, which is not the same as anyone else's lens in this room or anywhere else. So from that feedback, we were able to incorporate the feedback into our future grants and we're successful there on out. So it was really, really helpful not only to get support from your community, but also to get input and feedback from your community and from funders and donors too, and your board members, of course.
Rennie, you want to talk about funding sources?
I do a little bit. It's been an interesting journey for STARS for funding, and I will tell you all in the room that one of the best things we've done has been able to tell our story and to let people hear our story. We have to understand our metrics too. We understand how many rides we give, how many miles our drivers drive, and we have to understand all of those things to tell our story. So understanding that is really key to that. Understand what your business is and what you're doing. But because we've been able to tell our story, and certainly with our passengers, we get small donations from our passengers, but you have to understand that most of our passengers aren't really able to give us large donations, and that's why we're supporting them. But then community supporters hear our story, and so they give us donations as well. So we get, we have been getting about $3,000 or $4,000 a year in donations from small donations, and it's really helped us. And recently, one of the stories that I really love is that we recently got an angel grant. I don't know how many people in the room has ever heard of an angel grant, but I got a call from someone that says they heard your story and they work for a corporation, and this corporation lets their executives give angel grants every year. And so we ended up getting $2,500 from this angel. And so those sorts of things are out there, but you really have to have a story that you want to tell, and you have to let people hear it. We get donations, we get in-kind donations from our business, and we've kind of done this a little bit differently, is that we don't have a lot of way to recognize our volunteers. And so every other year when we have our volunteer appreciation, we go to our businesses and say, can you give us something small so that we can give prizes at our volunteer appreciation day? And the businesses get hit up a lot in this town. And so we go small with them, but it's meaningful that we do that. And so sometimes looking at how we're not going to have an auction, we don't have the people for that, but sometimes just looking how you might use your in-kind donations, because volunteer recruiting and retention is a really, really important part of what we do, because we have a lot of volunteers and we want to show our appreciation to them. One of the things we get grants for is actually mileage. So we do pay mileage to our volunteers. And what we found is the drivers that take the reimbursement actually drive the most miles. And part of that is so that we can expand our volunteer base, because if there's people in the community that if they didn't have help with fuel costs, they wouldn't be able to be one of our volunteers. And so expanding our volunteer base has been really important. We've used social media like Facebook and Nextdoor, and we're just about to kick off a campaign for Giving Tuesday. And so I think campaigns are kind of important. It's kind of how you look at your donors too and what they're giving you. Like we've always said, donation, give us a donation, give us a donation. And so we started thinking about it a little bit differently. And we go, what if we let the community, the people in the room, like you were talking about earlier, they may not be able to volunteer for us, but what if they could sponsor a ride for us? We know how much, we can tell you on our operational costs how much a ride costs. And we know it's cheaper than a commercial ride to Bend and Redmond. So we go about between $40 and $50 a ride, which is a lot less expensive than taking another kind of ride. So we're kicking off a campaign that's going to allow people in the community to engage with us on that level. Maybe you can't drive, you don't have time to volunteer, or you don't like to drive, but can you sponsor rides? And then on the other hand is, if you can't afford to sponsor a ride, how about driving, or how about dispatching? And so we want to engage the whole community and make it a whole effort within the community. So you'll start to see information coming out on our ride sponsorship campaign. Now, is it going to be successful? I have no idea, but but we're out there, and this is one thing about STARS. We never stop learning and we never stop trying. And so for an organization that wants to be successful, learn from your grantors and learn from your C4C and learn from other people that are doing the same thing.
I'm just going to tease out a few nuggets of wisdom that you shared there, starting on more of the sources of funding side. We've heard about grants. We've heard about grants from private. All right. Heard about grants from private foundations. Mayor Preedin mentioned grants from public entities like the city earlier, and there's, you know, state and federal grants, which is something that Susan, I know, helps organizations secure as well. You mentioned individual donors, whether that's someone that you know from your community or surprise or angel grants from further afield. You also mentioned, you know, that there's, and I pulled up our, you know, many ways to give example, because the flip side of this is when you're thinking about where to get funding from, these are probably some of the places it can come from. And so doing point in time campaigns is one way that you can potentially secure contributions from individuals as opposed to just asking them for money on an ad hoc basis. There's, you know, you said like some prize oriented things or like fundraising or fundraisers or raffles or things. So there's other revenue sources there. Are there any others down the line that I'm not, that I haven't covered here that folks want to mention? This isn't a test, but
I really just want to point out the strategy that STARS is using. The reason why I think your campaign will be so successful is because you use the newspaper, you use this social media, and people hear about STARS all throughout the whole year. And then at the end of the year, you'll make an ask of the community, and folks in the community will say, gosh, I've been hearing about STARS, or I know someone who my neighbor got a ride for their medical appointments, or I know volunteers, and that will prompt the gifts to come in. And that really long-term strategy, I think, is going to pay off and will be really, it is about the story and then making the ask and ingraining that name into the future for your campaign.
that's a perfect segue into sort of my probably last prompt here, which was advice for making a successful ask. And you both articulated ways that an ask, whether it is to an individual or whether it's to a foundation, can be successful. It's sort of that storytelling aspect. You mentioned like offering key data points so that people can really latch on to, like, this is how much a ride costs, or for every dollar you donate, it's contributing X. Are there other recommendations that y'all have for people who might be looking to fundraise for how they can create a compelling ask?
It starts with a relationship. Even if you're asking for a grant, if you're asking for an individual donation, it starts with building a relationship. So we call events like what you're trying to do a friend-raiser, right? Instead of a fundraiser, you want to build capacity and build relationship by telling people your story and why it's important. It's looking for the hope, the solution, right? Even if it's not a total solution, it's a piece of the solution, and people attach themselves to that. I wasn't always a grant maker. I was a grant seeker for a very long time. I was on the other side of the table. I was in Rennie's shoes. And then I worked for the Chamber of Commerce here in town. And our businesses at that time, about 15 years ago, were getting hit up 11 times a week. 11 times a week. And who are they donating to? It's not just folks in Sisters. It's not just Sisters Country. They're getting hit up from our schools in Lake Oswego because somebody's got a, vacation home at Black Butte, and we're going to make a movie basket, and we're going to do all these things. So people are getting asks all the time. What it comes down to is telling that story. And when I was on the board for the 4-H Foundation, I was the youngest person on the board. It was a very long time ago. I'm no longer very young. I'm very old. All the gray hair is here. And raising children does that to you, as most of you know. It's very quickly.
Can't confirm.
Oh, it's terrible. They're really terrible children. They're lovely. It's on record. You're lovely people. I'm telling the Zoom people. My children are lovely.
Roundhouse Foundation hates children. It's
Yeah.
going on YouTube. Okay, got it.
T-shirts. No, it's one of those moments of saying, why is this important to you? Why is what you're doing important? And so what I told our 4-H board was, because everybody said, I don't want to give an ask. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to go to my friend, the mayor, and say, you know what you should do? You really, don't you love 4-H? You want to give to the pigs? And it's like, it's more to that. There's more to it. I mean, I do love pigs, but it's one of those moments of saying, I love this program, and let me tell you why. And let me tell you why it's important to me and why I'm donating my time, my effort, my energy, because I guarantee that you could always make a little bit more. You could always do a little bit more, but you're doing everything that you can because you love the organization. So how do you share that passion? And it starts with relationships. Question? Sorry.
I was just going to let Julia add on to the part about making the ask, and then we'll get to you.
Yeah, I might just add a couple things. Those were great answers from all of you, but just two things, particularly with grant writing, that I've noticed is one, just community buy-in and the importance of, having these partnerships and showing that you have relationships in the community and other folks. Sometimes that looks like match funding, which is oftentimes really important for some grants. And so who else can contribute to this to make it a stronger proposal? And then also just the sustainability of it. So how is this going to continue, after this funding, and what does that look like? And how can you tell that story of how your idea or your project or your program is going to be sustainable in the long run?
I want to do a quick reframe on asking for money too, because you are giving your friends and community members an opportunity to be part of the solution that they seek in your community. So you're not asking for money for you. You are giving them an opportunity to make a gift, to make a difference. And that's really important. And people want to give. So don't be shy about it. I know it's awkward, but it's a gift for you to have the opportunity to ask and for them to have the opportunity to give too.
That's a great reframe. Thank you. Erica, you had a question?
For the last decade plus. And what I'm really frustrated by in the last year and a half is just how onerous having an entity with a board and to actually do the organizational structure, and then having to have all of this sort of funding, asking, and like there's so much that goes into the process of recruiting dollars to do the work and into the organization to do the work. And I just keep coming back to, but I just want to do the work, right? I just want to do the work. And when I look at LLCs and I look at, there's all these different entities. And what I just want is a community with whom to do the stuff that seems like the right thing to do. Why are there so many barriers? Sorry, now I sound ragey. To do effective community building. Hi, sorry, didn't mean to be a downer.
No, I mean, I was talking with an artist this morning who was lamenting the business side of art, right? And that like, oh, I didn't sign up to be an artist to spend 90% of my time trying to run a business so that I can sell my art. I signed up to be because I wanted to be an artist. Any thoughts or responses to that, Julia?
Yeah, I just will make a plug for COIC and our rural community building program. That's really the focus of what we're trying to do. And but great, I'll give you my card. But yeah, and we have funding in terms of grant funding for staff capacity. So Nick and I and two other people on our team, that's really what our focus is. We have COIC as a very bureaucratic organization, I would say, that has the background and the structure to be able to be a fiscal sponsor. And so we're able to do that for a wide range of organizations. And that really takes the burden off those initiatives to like really just get the work done. I think this focus on grant writing also is really burdensome and kind of scary for some folks as well. And we also are able to do that. And so we've been successful with, especially like some of these smaller ideas as like a starting point and applying for particularly like the foundation funding, city funding, county funding, the county like lottery dollars, all of those types of things. That's why we're here. So just, yeah, encourage anyone who has a small idea to reach out, and we're happy to connect and provide that service.
Other thoughts about Susan?
I will just say you are not alone in this. I mean, I truly think this is sort of the plight of every nonprofit founder, right? It's like, I want to solve this problem right now. It is urgent. We need the funding. I have the ability to do it. I have the desire to do it. And let's get it going. But unfortunately, there are all these legal requirements. And part of that is, you are probably a super ethical, amazing person who wants to solve a real challenge in the world, but not everyone who is pursuing that goal has, positive and ethical, what's the word I'm looking for?
Intentions?
Intentions. Yeah. So there are, it's like Helen said, the artist who wants to be an artist, and I have a business, but I just want to write grants and I don't really want to do QuickBooks, but it's just sort of part of that process. So I just wanted to say, I hear you, and I don't have any specific advice for you except culturally.
Rennie, do you have some specific advice? Sure, but you got to take the microphone.
I'm a lawyer. This is when you boo. It's really unfortunate that our legal system is as it is, but there are a lot of scam artists in this world, and there are a lot of embezzlers. My wife used to be an elementary school principal. One of the first things they trained them to do is to make sure that their PTA treasurer doesn't take off with the dough.
So there are some frameworks in place for a reason, even if they're agonizing for all of us who just want to do the work. Rennie, as a founder, got anything to say?
Couple of things. Number one is you need a team. And it might be 2 or 3 people, but you need it for a lot of reasons. You need it to get the work done, and you need it for your own sanity, and you need it for a sounding board. I would also recommend, as you're starting your project, to think of your project as we did, like as a pilot program or a proof of concept, because if you're not, if you don't have that concept really honed in, it's really hard to tell your story. So I would say, think of it that way, and then kind of operate in that arena for a while, trying to prove that concept. And then I think that when you're looking for funding in the beginning, I think it's easier if you know what you need and your funding is going to be somewhat restricted. I need money to do X, Y, and Z. STARS is just now starting to get some unrestricted sort of, not that we don't use it for our operations, but we don't have to use it for, this is the website and this is that and that's the other. So that gives you a little bit more freedom to do your operations. So just remember that it is a process, and it starts slowly. We started very slowly in the beginning, but you can grow. And then I just wish you all the luck in the world, because I know what your frustration is, but I also know that it is if the community needs what you want to give, you will be able to do that. So good luck.
Aaron, I'm going to give you the final word here.
Okay, well, and just quickly, we talk about relationships, but build coalition. And it just because it doesn't exist here in Sisters doesn't mean that your idea doesn't exist somewhere else. So seek out those people that are doing that thing already and ask how they did it. And maybe that you don't know them yet, right? So maybe Julie is a great resource. I'm sure Julie is a great resource. Not a maybe, she is. Call her. But also, I mean, that's what we do is we get calls all the time. I used the food bank example earlier, but they're not talking to each other. Our regional food banks aren't talking to each other. Our regional resources aren't communicating in a way, because oftentimes you get really invested in a project and you're so laser focused on what you have to do. I have to feed the people tomorrow. I got to make sure the kids get in the classroom. I got to get the rides for the folks. I got to do all these pieces, and we're focused only on that component. And we forget that other people have been where you are and can walk you through that. And if nothing else, they can go, yeah, it really sucks right now. Sorry. You're going to get through it and it's going to be okay. But this is how you do that. And part of it is just embracing that moment and knowing there are other people. So whatever project that you're working on, I'm sure there's some of us up here that know others that are trying to do something similar and can introduce you to those that have done it well, those that have maybe not done it well. Also understanding that there's lessons in that failure as well. And we call that paying tuition. We pay a lot of tuition even in our organization. So
I think those are some sage words to end on. For the sake of time, we'll pause there, or we'll end there. But everyone, take a deep breath. We were here because you are trying to do good work for your community. That's inspiring. That's amazing. You should be honored and celebrated for that. But it is hard, and it is complex, and it is agonizingly bureaucratic at times. And the only way out is through. I hope that tonight we've given you some inspiration, possibly some connections. I've heard a few, key tidbits here. Telling your story and being able to really articulate your story is really important. That there are a bevy of resources out in the community to help you through this process. That there's no one way to do it, whether it's fiscal sponsorship, whether it's just literally going and knocking on doors and figuring out how to do this without any formal entity, whether it's starting your own full-fledged nonprofit. There's a lot of ways to give back and get engaged. We will be following up with all of you if you registered for this event with a list of some of the resources and some of the tidbits and sound bites that you shared here, as well as the recording if you want to go back and watch all 2 hours of this again or share it with your friends. And, we're going to be cleaning up here, but there's a lot of expertise in this room. So I'm sure there's some people that would be happy to give you their card or to talk to you. And if not, you can always follow up with us again, and we'd be happy to play that matchmaker role as you're working in this space. So with that, case closed, class dismissed, tuition, class dismissed. That's it. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.